Using the power of the internet, you can now watch GLC on any TV in the US, Canada, the UK, and Ireland with Roku. Basically, a box that connects to your television. Roku acts as a middleman between your internet connection and your television. So if you have internet service at your home, chances are high that you can watch all of the great GLC programming. And best of all, it's highly affordable too, with only a one-time fee ranging from $50 to $100. Log on to our website, www.glc.us.com, for details on how you can watch GLC via Roku.
Well, welcome to the Friday edition of Update News. I'm Amy Cooper here with
Dr. Rick Wodge, and it feels like Friday.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Okay, well, we have a lot of news today. So first thing we'll do is bring you the weekend lineup before we go to Lars' video. And here it is, the two-parter. Sandra Barrs and Margie Pesdertz, first hour. Toby Janicki and Troy Mitchell, the second hour. That will be airing tonight, Friday at 8 p.m., Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock, and Monday early morning, 1 a.m. And then it's Rick and Amy with Aliens in the Bible. That will be Saturday, 1 a.m., Saturday night at 8 p.m., and Sunday at 2 p.m. Lou Duntz, Rick Wodge. That was like...
Wow.
2 years ago. It's 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
No, 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
2011. So, wow, that was like the first time you came, except it was 3 weeks after the first time you came, when you brought Lou. So it's not like you're hosting this one. That's funny.
No.
Wow, your face has changed a lot. Anyway, that will be airing Saturday morning, 5 a.m., Sunday morning at 1 a.m., Sunday evening at 8 p.m. I'll try to watch that. And Monday afternoon at 2 p.m. And then Steve and Kathy Pittman. This is also from 2011. They're from somewhere in Europe, and I'm thinking it's the Netherlands, but I could be wrong about that. Mom and Dad hosted that program. That will air Sunday at 5 a.m. and Monday morning at 7 a.m.
I'm not sure what you meant by my face has changed. I guess I was smiling there and now I'm not smiling. Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah. Now you work here.
I have a great letter. You're going to love this. Dear GLC, thank you for bringing a light into the lives of so many people each and every day. We just wanted to make a small donation on behalf of the many blessings that we've received as a result of giving to GLC. I was recently asked why I continue to give to GLC, and although I do not feel obligated, I answered in this way with this very simple testimony. GLC is the only broadcast network that I know of that offers a true and continuous support of Israel. I support Israel as I am a Gentile believer who has been grafted into the commonwealth of Israel through the blood of the Messiah, and am humbled by the thought of that thought every single day of my life. I do not claim to be Jewish, practice Judaism, nor do I think I will be saved by keeping the law. I'm a believer in Yeshua HaMashiach by choice, and believe that we are all saved by grace through faith in Yeshua, and that there is no other name given under heaven by which anyone can be saved. I believe that trying to follow God's commandments are a way of honoring God and having a better quality of life, not trying to earn my way into heaven. I give to GLC by choice as led by the Holy Spirit through prayer, and I'm happy to do so. I've been wonderfully blessed by the Lord for doing so, and so have the people I love. Thank you so much again for allowing us this opportunity to partner with you in some small way. Thank you, Lord Yeshua, for introducing me to GLC and the many blessings I've received as a result of it. May God continue to bless you folks in every way possible. Your friend, John in Odessa. P.S. That young lady running your bookstore is absolutely fantastic when it comes to helping people.
That would be our little Jenny. What a great letter.
And he got it. I'm right on the money theologically.
Yeah.
It was great. Could use 100 of those letters.
I found it interesting that he was asked why he continues to support GLC. Mm-hmm. And that probably has something to do with some of the changes that we went through a few years ago, and trying to line up the station theologically.
Right.
And
right.
I thank God for you every day for coming on board. It's like you don't need any training. You actually, you're right in line, and it makes it Much easier to work with you.
I'm honored to be here.
Okay, well, we're going to get to Lars' video because I messed that up the other day and we had to edit the program. So we're going to do Lars' video and we'll be back right after this.
Shalom, I'm Lars Enarsson with the Watchman International, coming to you with this update on the situation in Israel on Friday, August 22nd. The conflict in Israel and in Gaza is far from over. In fact, since Hamas broke the ceasefire this week, an unprecedented amount of rockets have been fired into Israel. In one day, 170 rockets alone. That is more than the peak of the Nazi aerial bombardment of London in the Second World War. The chairman of Hof Ashkelon community or region north of the Gaza Strip said in an interview this week that the population in Ashkelon will not survive more than another month of this kind of bombardment. If this conflict drags into September and October, into the fall feasts, we cannot take this bombardment, he said. And more Israelis are now also beginning to be affected by the bombardment, being wounded by the attacks. So we must pray, friends. Now, the response to this rocket fire by Hamas has so far been by the government and Prime Minister Netanyahu to launch aerial strikes targeting the military leaders of Hamas. In one strike, 3 of the main leadership in the southern Gaza Strip were taken out in such an aerial strike. Also, the top commander of Hamas military wing, Mohammed Deif, was targeted in an attack. His wife and his son were killed. It is unclear if Deif himself survived or if he was also killed. The leader of the Hamas movement in Gaza, Haniyeh, said in a speech yesterday that history has proven that these assassinations of Hamas leaders has only strengthened the Hamas movement. And unfortunately, he is right. These targeted killings of the Hamas leadership will not end this conflict. It will not give peace to Israel. So we need to continue to pray. As we have said now for several weeks, the only way that this conflict with Hamas will end is for Israel to launch a ground operation again into Gaza to destroy and defeat Hamas and to remain there permanently with the army and allow the Jewish settlers to once again move back into Gaza. Now that sounds like a harsh statement, but it is true. More and more people are saying the same thing in Israel. In fact, the brother-in-law of Prime Minister Netanyahu said in an interview this week that this is the only thing that can cause quiet. And in fact, he encouraged the leaders in the communities around Gaza that were the main spokespeople leading the protests against the settlements in Gaza, that they need to take an initiative to start a new movement by advocating the return of the settlers back into the Gaza Strip again. And they need to begin by apologizing to the settlers that were driven out from Gaza in 2005. That is the only way that these communities will have quiet, because the bombardment by Hamas that is taking place now and plaguing them today is the direct result of the disengagement from Gaza in 2005. One positive development is that it's now clear to anybody that the two-state solution is not a solution to the conflict. Slowly but surely it is becoming evident that a Palestinian state will not bring Israel quiet. In fact, it will bring the destruction of Israel. So some of the commentators now are beginning to compare the situation in Israel to the dire situation in 1948, when the State of Israel was founded. We believe that this is no exaggeration. In fact, Israel is coming to grips with the reality that they need to make no compromise with the Palestinian agenda. They need to occupy the entire land that God has given them. The two-state solution is no solution. And this is what we need to continue to pray for. While the conflict is going on now in Gaza, also we see how the radical Islamist movement ISIS is making rapid progressions in Iraq. And the West is also at odds with how can they stop this advancement. The aerial bombardments of the United States will not stop the ISIS in Iraq. And so the United States, as well as the European leaders, are tending now to believe that the only way to stop them is to begin to support Iran. Well, Iran is going to ask for favors in return, mainly that they can continue with their nuclear weapons program. So the situation is very, very grim, and we need to take our responsibility in prayer. Please go to our website, thewatchmaninternational.org, and to subscribe to the prayer alerts in the Elijah Prayer Army, where you will get additional information with the specific prayer points and the scriptures that will be the basis for our continued prayer. I'm Lars Enerson with the Watchman International. God bless you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Well, you know, I want to point out that as we're going through so much news on Israel and Gaza, the conflict, my heart personally has a lot of compassion for the Palestinian people. And the reason for that is I know how effective media control is. Our nation suffers greatly from media control. Mm-hmm. It grieves me that I don't have enough time to get together information to educate people about a lot of the things that only a lot of research can show you. So while their media control, though, is a little bit more forceful. It's a little bit more forceful. I mean, we have read and shared stories about the journalists going in, and you do not report anything that makes Hamas look negative.
Right.
Anything they're doing. It doesn't matter that they're firing rockets from UN schools and medical centers, and it doesn't matter that they're doing that. You're not going to report that, and if you do, possibly you're going to die. But they're not good to reporters who talk about them. Now, then you also have the protesters. Anybody in the Gaza Strip who would protest against Hamas, they don't really smile on that either. We're talking militants here. And we can't begin to understand the terror that those people actually live under. So what I want people to understand is, while it's very important to support the Palestinian people, you have to understand that a huge component of that is removing Hamas.
Right.
So that they're not making their lives miserable. Our first article today comes from Reuters, Atlantic Wire, and Israel National News. They're all saying the same thing, but some of them have different details to this, so we threw it all together, and here you go. Hamas-led gunmen in Gaza executed 18 Palestinians accused of collaborating with Israel on Friday, a day after Israeli forces killed 3 Hamas commanders, the highest-ranking militants to die in the 6-week war. Hamas militants wearing masks and dressed in black gunned down 7 of those condemned, their faces covered and hands bound, in front of worshippers emerging from the Omari Mosque on Palestine Square, the first public executions in the enclave since 1990.
And then another 11 were executed at an abandoned police station near Gaza City, Hamas security officials said. 2 bodies were seen being loaded onto an ambulance before Reuters journalists were told to leave the area. A website run by Hamas's internal security service said The resistance has begun an operation called Strangling the Necks, targeting collaborators who aid the Israeli occupation, kill our people, and destroy houses. A so-called conviction letter signed by the Palestinian resistance was posted on a wall near where the bodies of the alleged collaborators lay.
Maj, a website close to Hamas, just on Thursday, reported that Hamas's military wing, the Ezzedine al-Qassam brigades, executed 3 Gaza residents and arrested 7 others for collaborating with Israel. Obviously, they were already executed, so those weren't the ones killed today. The same website reported on August the 6th that a number of Arab collaborators had been killed. The Palestinian Center for Human Rights denounced the killings of Gazans by militants. The chairman of the organization said in a statement, "We demand the Palestinian National Authority and the Palestinian resistant armed factions to intervene to stop these extrajudicial executions, no matter what the reasons and motives are."
In the last week of July, Palestinian sources reported that over 30 Gazans were executed by Hamas, most of them in the Shijaya neighborhood. In that case, too, Hamas claimed that they were collaborators with Israel. The often public deaths of informants or so-called collaborators are a routine part of life in Gaza, although instances greatly increase during times of heavy conflict. Back in 2012, following the last conflagration with Israel and Gaza, Hamas executed a number of Palestinians it had accused of giving up valuable intel to the Israelis. As with today's killings, the men are executed publicly as a warning not to cooperate with Israeli intelligence efforts.
Writing about 6 Palestinian men who suffered a similar fate in 2012, the AP described the disturbing scene. Some in the crowd stomped and spit on the bodies. A 6th corpse was tied to a motorcycle and dragged through the streets as people screamed, "Spy, spy." The Hamas military wing, Al-Qassam, claimed responsibility in a large handwritten note attached to a nearby electricity pole. Hamas said the 6 were killed because they gave Israel information about fighters and rocket launching sites. As with Friday's executions, the 2012 shootings happened in the midst of an ongoing battle between Israel and Hamas. In Friday's fighting, Hamas and other groups continued to fire rockets into Israel, including the targeting of Israel's largest city, Tel Aviv. Israel has reportedly killed 4 Palestinians in airstrikes on Gaza on Friday.
A Hamas spokesperson recently told Al Jazeera that since Operation Pillar of Defense ended in 2012, hundreds of our men were martyred digging the tunnels during the previous lull period. Of the hundreds who died in the digging, at least 160 children have been killed in the tunnels, according to the Journal of Palestine Studies in 2012, a strong indicator that Hamas has no qualms about lethally manipulating child labor. Many of those who survived digging the terror tunnels did not meet a better end than their martyred companions. In recent weeks, Hamas has executed dozens of the diggers to make absolutely certain that they would not reveal information about the locations in which they were digging, according to reports.
And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to Hamas and what the Palestinian people are living under. We've got to get rid of Hamas for the Palestinian people to live freely. Well, also on Friday, a mortar bomb fired from Gaza killed a 4-year-old Israeli boy, the first Israeli child killed in this conflict. More than 80 rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel, wounding 3 people at a synagogue in Ashdod that exploded completely, and 2 others in Beersheba and Sderot, Israeli police said. Israel launched its offensive on Gaza July 8th with the stated aim of putting an end to cross-border rocket fire. Since Tuesday, Israel has focused its attacks on the military leadership of Hamas. Hamas identified the 3 as Mohammed Abu Shamala, Riyad El-Attar, and Mohammed Barhoum, saying they had been at the forefront of the fight against Israel for 2 decades. Israel said 2 of them had been instrumental in the 2006 kidnapping of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit, who was held in Gaza for 5 years before being freed in exchange for nearly 1,000 Palestinian prisoners.
Well, after the 10-day Egyptian-brokered ceasefire fell apart, an Israeli airstrike hit a building in northern Gaza, killing the wife and 2 children of Mohammed Deif, Hamas's top military commander. Deif, mastermind of a tunnel network under Gaza that has been used to attack Israel and long a target, appears to have survived, although his whereabouts are unknown. And on Thursday, Netanyahu granted preliminary approval for the call-up of 10,000 Army reservists, signaling the possibility of heightened military action in Gaza.
Okay, also from the Associated Press, the senior Hamas leader has said the group carried out the kidnapping and killing of those 3 Israeli teens in the West Bank in June, the first time anyone from the Islamic militant group has said it was behind that attack that helped spark the current war in the Gaza Strip. Saleh Al-Roui told a conference in Turkey on Wednesday that Hamas's military wing, Al-Qassam Brigades, carried out what he described as a heroic operation with the broader goal of sparking a new Palestinian uprising. It was an operation by your brothers from the Al-Qassam Brigades, he said, saying Hamas had hoped to exchange the youths for Palestinian prisoners held by Israel.
Hamas has repeatedly praised the kidnappings, but Aruri, the group's exiled West Bank leader, is the first member to claim responsibility. Israel has accused Hamas of orchestrating the kidnappings and identified 2 operatives as the chief suspects. The 2 men remain on the loose. Israeli government spokesman Mark Regev said that Aruri's admission shows, quote, Hamas has no qualms whatsoever about targeting innocent civilians.
The kidnappings of the 3 teens while they were hitchhiking on June 12th, along with the discovery of their bodies 2 weeks later, sparked a broad Israeli crackdown on Hamas members throughout the West Bank, and that's Judea and Samaria. Hamas responded with heavy rocket fire out of the Gaza Strip, leading Israel to launch an aerial and ground invasion of the territory. That's what they're in right now.
That's right. Aruri is one of Hamas's most senior figures. He founded Hamas's military wing in the West Bank 2 decades ago and now commands the group's operations in the area from exile in Turkey. He was deported several years ago in a deal that freed him from Israeli prison. Earlier this week, Israel identified Aruri as the mastermind of an alleged plot to launch an uprising in the West Bank aimed at toppling Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
Oh, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, this one comes from Fox News and with a little help from the AP. A nonpartisan government watchdog agency said Thursday that the Pentagon broke the law when it swapped 5 Taliban leaders for Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl earlier this year. The GAO, Government Accountability Office, in a legal opinion issued at the request of congressional lawmakers, said the Defense Department violated the law by failing to notify key Capitol Hill committees at least 30 days in advance. Further, the report said the Pentagon broke another law by using funds that were not technically available. The GAO said the law in this case is, quote, clear and unambiguous. The agency said that while the Defense Department defended the legality of the controversial swap, quote, in our view, DOD has dismissed the significance of the express language in the law. The report comes several months after the Obama administration released 5 senior Taliban members from Guantanamo Bay in exchange for Bergdahl, who had disappeared in 2009. Under the exchange terms, the 5 Taliban are to remain in Qatar for a year. Lawmakers at the time complained about the security implications of releasing Taliban leaders from Guantanamo, but also about the late notification by the Pentagon that they were going forward with the swap. Defense Department Press Secretary Rear Admiral John Kirby told Fox News Thursday night the operation to retrieve Sergeant Bergdahl was lawfully conducted, and that was also the judgment of the Justice Department. Nothing has changed about our view that was a lawful recovery operation. At issue were recent laws passed by Congress. The latest defense spending bill states that no money can be used to transfer Guantanamo prisoners to another country, except in accordance with a separate related defense law. That law requires the Secretary of Defense to notify key congressional committees at least 30 days before such a transfer. The swap occurred May 31st of this year. May 31st. However, the GAO report said those committees were only notified between May 31st and June 2nd. When DOD failed to notify specified congressional committees at least 30 days in advance of its transfer of Guantanamo Bay detainees to Qatar, DOD used appropriated funds in violation of Section 8111. The report said. It also said DOD violated the Anti-Deficiency Act, which bars spending by agencies above the amount of money that Congress has obligated. In this case, the report said the Defense Department spent nearly $1 million more than it had. Pick it up.
Wow. Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican from Alaska, among the lawmakers who requested the report, said Thursday that the president clearly defied the law. We have all seen the president decide to override the concept of checks and balances in many questionable executive actions, but the GAO opinion confirms that by doing so in connection with the release of Bo Bergdahl, he engaged in a clear violation of the she said in a statement. I hope this opinion by the Nonpartisan Government Accountability Office sends a clear signal to the president that his recent shift towards unilateral action is not consistent with this nation's principles and our carefully designed separation of powers. Good for you. Whether the finding will result in any formal legal complaint remains to be seen. The House Armed Services Committee has prepared a resolution of disapproval, potentially to be considered later this year about the swap, but such a measure is non-binding.
There's been lots of news about our Texas Governor, Rick Perry. I'm very hopeful that I can get some information to tell some things behind the scenes to help people understand what's going on there. I can tell you one thing. He has his eye on the White House, and they're not liking what he's doing and stepping forward to defend our borders.
Only because he's making them look bad by doing the right thing.
Well, maybe so. And this article is just about him. It comes from ABC News. Just 2 days after smiling for a mugshot, Texas Governor Rick Perry took his message to conservatives in Washington, D.C., quickly turning from talk of his indictment to weighing in on the threat ISIS poses to the United States. In a speech at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, Perry connected the border crisis to the Islamic State, warning that terror groups could easily cross the border between the U.S. and Mexico. Perry said, "We have a serious issue facing this country and the security of our citizens. We need to be very vigilant. We have to be using every authority that we have."
The Texas governor said the recent events in Syria and Iraq should put the country on alert for a potential terrorist attack and argued the U.S. must respond in a decisive manner to root out ISIS. Perry called for more forceful action in Iraq to fight ISIS, including additional airstrikes, an increase in special forces, and offering intelligence assistance. "I think all your options have to be open," he said. Asked whether the U.S. should send combat troops into Iraq, Perry said it would be irresponsible to reveal any strategy to the enemy. "We have come to one of those moments where American action will be decisive and inaction will be consequential." Perry said the midterm election will be the last opportunity to pass judgment on the Obama presidency.
And from the AP and Times.com, 2 new cases of Ebola have emerged in Nigeria in an alarming development. They're outside of the group of caregivers who treated an airline passenger who arrived with Ebola and died, Health Minister Oyibuchi Chukwu said on Friday. The 2 are spouses of caregivers who had direct contact with Liberian-American Patrick Sawyer, who flew into Nigeria last month with the virus and infected 11 others before he died in July, including those 2 caregivers who both subsequently died of Ebola. Chukwu told reporters.
Nigerian officials initially claimed the risk of exposure to others was minimal because Sawyer was whisked into isolation after arriving at the airport. However, the Lagos State Health Commissioner acknowledged earlier this month that Sawyer was not immediately quarantined the first day. The latest 2 cases bring the total number of confirmed infections in Nigeria to 14. 5 have died from the illness, 5 recovered, and another 4 are being treated in isolation in Lagos, the commercial capital where Sawyer's flight landed. The damage has been far greater in Guinea and Sierra Leone and Liberia, which have each recorded hundreds of cases.
Liberia has seen the most deaths, and I think that's sitting at 592. We told you about the slum area that had the Ebola center in it, where the people attacked. They did have to seal off, they chose to seal off the slum, and a teenager was shot, and he died because the people didn't like that they were being quarantined. Well, not really quarantined, but kept from spreading the virus.
Isolated.
Have a wonderful weekend. We love you, and we'll see you next week.